There's a place where I was the only white guy that worked as a lifeguard down in that area, the east side. And you know where you can always tell where the best basketball in the state is and the best basketball in the city is.
And California's grid operator, California ISO, just announced they are going to possibly have to start issuing a series of emergency notifications.
And are people of color that are less likely to have their ID at any one given time.
Joe Biden bumbles at a speech in Pennsylvania, shocking no one. California power grid is apparently going to fail. Maybe it's because of all the electric cars, or just because it sucks. John Fetterman, the Senate candidate in Pennsylvania, thinks that black people are too dumb to have IDs. And some more updates on the FBI raid at Mar-a-Lago. All that and more coming up on this episode of Daily Caller Live. My name is Jobob. Thanks so much for tuning in. Daily Caller Live starts right now.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
That is actually their name, Jobob.
Live from the dingy bunker, completely cut off from the outside world, except for you fine folks. My name is Jobob. This is Daily Caller Live. Thanks so much for tuning in on today. It is August 31st, year of our Lord 2022. Joe Biden made a speech in Pennsylvania about, I think, gun violence, but kind of went off the rails a lot. Now, I have an issue here. Not an issue, more of a problem that I don't know entirely how to solve when it comes to what we should play and what we shouldn't play. I could do an entire hour on Joe Biden's speech yesterday, just playing clip after clip after clip of, well, he said this is a political thing, and we're going to argue this point. He said this was just a bumbling, rambling craziness thing. We're going to play that. He said this is just flat out wrong. So I don't know what to actually put on. There's so many clips. Whenever Joe Biden magically appears at a microphone, which doesn't happen all that often, there are so many things that he says that are so outlandish and so odd that I can't ever figure out what to play and what not to play. So we distilled it down to, I think, the important things politically and also just a crazy story, because he's a crazy old man. And by that, I mean he's crazy old and also crazy. Let's just get into it. Let's play this. This is from a political standpoint, just from a political standpoint and politics alone. It's interesting the different dynamics of a presidential, well, not a president, the president himself with failing polling numbers. Now, if the president from your party comes to your state, you go to that rally, especially if you're running as a political candidate. So I'll explain all of this after we watch this clip. This is what I thought was interesting, just from a political standpoint. Again, things that you do unless your numbers are so bad as Joe Biden's are, you don't do them. If you haven't already, would love a little, if you click the like button or the little share button, really helps us out each and every day to continue doing the show, keep the ball rolling. Also, give us a comment, let us know what you think, especially from a politics things. Again, I look at politics as a sport, and this is a fascinating component of the sport that is politics. Check this out.
And by the way, he couldn't be here today. We spoke, Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman. When I say he's a powerful voice, I used to be in the old days a pretty good athlete, and if someone was really big and tough, you say, I wouldn't screw with him if I had a sledgehammer. Well, I tell you what, Fetterman's a hell of a guy, a powerful voice for working people, and he's going to make a great United States Senator. He's going to make a great United States Senator.
Okay, so I want to get into John Fetterman a little bit in a quick second. Again, I know that a bunch of you probably don't care about the Pennsylvania senator race, but if the Senate is going to be the backstop that stops us spending way more money and doing more ridiculous things, those swing states are very important. Now, the political thing and the political observation that I would like all of us to see is that if you're running for the United States Senate or the governor or any big, powerful seat in your particular state, and the president of the United States from your party comes to your state, you go to that event. It goes without saying, it's an obvious boost. You want the president to come to your state. Most people can't get the president to come to their state. But in this case, Joe Biden's polling numbers are so bad that John Fetterman decided not to go to that rally. The guy who's running for the Senate in Pennsylvania thought that it would damage him to be seen on a stage with Joe Biden in a race as tight as it is in Pennsylvania. I don't want to get into local Pennsylvania senatorial politics, but how is it that the balance of power in the United States Senate, the most respected deliberative body in the world, is coming down to a guy like John Fetterman, who lived off of his parents' income well into his 40s. Maybe we'll get into that a little bit later. And Dr. Oz. How are these the two people that are going to ultimately be a huge deciding factor in the United States Senate? But it just goes to show you how bad Joe Biden's polling numbers are, that the Senate candidate of his party in the state that the president is in said, I don't think I want to go to that. Yeah, pretty terrible. I wanted to play this other clip from Joe Biden as he bumbles, again, shocking no one. He bumbles through some weird story. This is just out of the, 15 clips we could have chosen. This is the where are we going here, Grandpa? Where are we taking a ride on this conversation train that has lost its way? Watch this, and then I want to get to something that Senate candidate John Fetterman said. Check this out.
If I can just interject for a moment, my deceased son, Bo, he was the Attorney General of the state of Delaware. And what he used to do is go down on the east side, what's called the Bucket, highest crime rate in the country. There's a place where I was the only white guy that worked as a lifeguard down in that area, on the east side. And you know you can always tell where the best basketball in the state is and the best basketball in the city is. It's where everybody shows up.
Okay. That was Kamala Harris-esque if it weren't Joe Biden-esque. My son, Bo, was the Attorney General, and he used to go down to this place, which was a rough neighborhood, where I was the only white guy who was a lifeguard, and we played basketball, and that's where the best basketball was because... Okay, all right. Again, of all of the clips we could have played, there was a bunch of gun stuff that he talked about. There was a bunch of, you know what? I decided not to bring this clip on because I don't want to get mired down in the politics stuff. But Joe Biden also yesterday during that speech said, when are the MAGA Republicans going to denounce the January 6th riot? When is that going to happen? Dude, that has happened so many times already. And so what I've learned yesterday, or what I not learned, figured out, realized yesterday, is that the whole January 6th thing is going to be the new racism thing for Democrats. Since Nixon, maybe Reagan, Democrats have been calling Republicans racist because, they just decide they like to do that. There's no backing of any of that, especially in modern days. But nevertheless, Democrats like to call Republicans racist. And it happened with President Trump quite a bit, where they say, when is he going to denounce the racist activities? Okay, he's done that 20 times. If you ask him if he's a racist and he says no, let's just assume that that's what he's going to answer every single time you ask him. But constantly, Democrats and the lefty media has been saying, well, this Republican, when is this Republican going to come out and say they're not a racist? Well, they already did a bunch of times. Now, I think given that minorities of all races are leaving the Democratic Party and going to the Republican Party, that whole race thing is not going to work for them. So they're going to move on to the January 6th thing. Joe Biden again saying, when are the Republicans going to denounce what happened on January 6th? Well, they all have. All of the big important Republicans have said, yeah, January 6th was not cool. Let's not have that again. That was dumb and stupid, and we denounce it. And regardless of how many times Republicans, mainstream Republicans, denounce what happened on January 6th using violence at the Capitol, they're going to keep saying, well, when is it going to be the time that they denounce it? All right, okay. Everybody already has. If you don't want to believe that, that's fine. But your mainstream Republicans have every single one of them have come out and said, yeah, January 6th was awful, including Donald Trump. So again, I don't know. Do with that what you will. But the guy who didn't show up, backtracking, circling back to the beginning of this segment, the guy who Joe Biden wasn't necessarily campaigning for, but in Pennsylvania for a specific reason. Obviously, that's a swing state there, especially with the Senate seat. The guy who didn't show up, who's running for Senate in the seat that the president from his party came to, I found this clip on the internet that I just thought was interesting and kind of indicative of who this guy is. Check it out. This is John Fetterman, who's running for, if you're in Pennsylvania, one, thanks for watching. And two, apparently your choices are the reality TV show doctor and this guy. Check it out. Oh, also, by the way, if you haven't already, I see a couple thousand of you watching on the Facebook little counter thing. If you wouldn't mind, just click the little like button, the little reaction button, maybe the angry button, maybe the laughing button, the sad button, anything. Just engage with the post. Let us know what you think in the comment section. Also, the little share button really, really does help us out. Appreciate you doing so. Check this out from John Fetterman, candidate for Senate in Pennsylvania.
In my own state, they are going to attempt to pass a constitutional amendment, making sure that universal voting ID for every time you vote, not just when you sign up to vote, but every time you vote, because they understand that at any given time, there's tens of thousands of Pennsylvanians who typically are on the poorer side and are people of color that are less likely to have their ID at any one given time.
Those dumb, stupid minorities can't have their ID on them because they're so inept and can't do anything right that we shouldn't have voter ID. I guess I don't. I know I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here. We've talked about this so many times, but I don't understand how they don't understand the racism behind what they're saying. Effectively, what you're saying, if you're talking about, we just don't want to create a situation where black people or minorities don't have their ID and not able to vote. What you're effectively saying is those dumb black people can't get their ID to vote. We should help them out because they're too stupid to help themselves. That's effectively what you're saying. I don't believe that, but apparently a bunch of the people that are proponents of no voter ID at all think that. Now, Pennsylvania is looking to pass a constitutional amendment that says you have to show an ID to vote. They're trying to spin it, John Fetterman specifically is trying to spin it as, well, they know that minorities aren't going to have their ID, so they won't vote. I'm like, okay, that's not the reasoning behind it. The reasoning behind it is you need to make sure the elections are as secure as possible. And the only way to do that is to show an ID to prove that you're eligible to vote. That doesn't seem like a super complex or controversial statement, yet it is in the state of Pennsylvania. Also, just FYI, John Fetterman, again, I don't like the fact that Pennsylvanians have to pick between a reality TV show doctor in Dr. Oz. And I know there's going to be the comments saying, well, Donald Trump was an outsider and reality TV host. And okay, different thing. I'm not a big fan of having these two guys be the Senate candidates. It's probably pretty obvious which direction I would have to go if I was living in Pennsylvania and had to pick between these two yahoos. But this guy, John Fetterman, at least Dr. Oz is at least embodying the American dream. I think immigrated here from Turkey. And although he is I don't know what you call him, just a reality TV show guy, he did make a great living and it exemplifies what the American dream is. John Fetterman, on the other hand, if you don't know this, and sorry that we're getting too into this Pennsylvania politics, was living off of his parents' income well into his 40s. I myself don't remember. I think I was in college maybe. My parents were still, I think I got $20 a week. Was it that? I think that was it in college. And I think that was the last that my parents financially supported me. But my primary source of income, I had a job in college. I don't know. I'm going off the rails here. Basically, John Fetterman's family supported him financially, and he's admitted this himself. His family money was the primary source of his income well into his 40s. So another one of those Bernie Sanders type characters who never had a job other than government. And we're supposed to be like, oh, yeah, that's great. Maybe you should run things. Craziness. All right, we'll bounce off to this because I think this is a hilarious story given all of the press that it's gotten around the country. This is happening in California. So we talked about this last week when Gavin Newsom came out and said, well, all of the cars in California will be electric by 2035, which is a unrealistic goal. I am not I don't want to say, I like the environment. I think a lot of us do I'd like to preserve the environment. I am not opposed to greener, more renewable energies being put in place. But at the same time, I don't like being lied to when it comes to how possible all of this stuff is. I'm not sure how much we want to get into this, but I did want to play this clip, excuse me, from Bill Melugin on Tucker Carlson last night, where he's talking about what's going on in California, which are rolling blackouts, because California's power grid, even though they're going to support all of those cars in just 10 years, can't handle it being hot outside. Check this out.
Hey, Tucker, good evening to you. So here's the deal. We are expecting a serious heat wave out here in California over the coming days. And California's grid operator, California ISO, just announced that because of that heat warning, which starts tomorrow, they say that is going to stress the energy grid, and they are going to possibly have to start issuing a series of emergency notifications that are power related. On top of that, they say they do expect they're going to have to call on Californians to voluntarily conserve energy via flex alerts over the weekend. So that just coming down from California ISO announcing that they do expect some serious stress on our energy grid out here because of this coming heat wave. And because of that, they may have to issue emergency notifications. What that is going to mean, we'll have to see. There have been rolling blackouts, flex alerts, that sort of thing in the past.
All right, so California, which is I live in California. I'm in California right now. Is going to announce rolling brownouts or blackouts or power-related notifications, as the press release says. Now, the ironic part about this is, like everything I was talking about, is that California announced just last week that they were going to try and get rid of automobiles and cars that didn't have electric capabilities. Now, obviously, that's impossible to do, but I still wanted to play this clip from Governor Gavin Newsom just last week before California power authorities said, hey, you're going to need to calm down on using electricity. Watch this from the governor, presidential hopeful Gavin Newsom.
2 years ago, we took a risk. We came out front. I did an executive order saying in 2035, California was going to lead the way on alternative fuel vehicles. Tomorrow, the California Air Resources Board is going to codify that. We will be the first jurisdiction in the world to require all new cars to be sold to be alternative fuel cars.
Yeah, so he went on to say more, well, all the cars sold are going to be alternative fuels and electricity. So here's an interesting statistic that I feel like you might find, interesting. If all of the electricity in the entire country was pulled together and put into electric cars, it wouldn't be able to cover the mileage that we already drive for gas-powered vehicles. Again, I am not against finding more renewable ways to, have a sustainable energy system. I'm not against that. I like the environment. I don't like wrecking the environment, and I think I don't like pollution. But at the same time, you need to be realistic when you look at these sorts of things and know that if you can't take all of the energy in the country and put them into electric cars, we can't drive all the miles we're already driving. It's just not possible. And on top of that, that's not including any of the other electricity that we already use. California's grid system and Texas's grid system and a bunch of your other big states are already stretched to the point where they can't really handle much more from a capacity standpoint, yet they're trying to push these electric cars on us in just 10 years. Now, what's the solution here, I guess? Well, the solution, and by solution is a kind of a loose term here. In my opinion, and again, I don't know everything about this, but it would seem that at some point there needs to be an investment in renewable energy. But when that investment happens, it needs to be made sure that the technology in place is able to sustain all of the goals that are looking to be met by that investment. What I mean by that is the technology right now is not where it needs to be in order to justify the massive amounts of investments that the government is trying to put into it. Probably it should be that we should wait a little bit before that technology improves. In the last 10 years, that battery power has improved drastically. Maybe in another 20, 30 years, that technology will be worth putting a ton of money into. But right now, it's just not there. And it's evidenced by California's rolling blackouts because it's too hot outside. And then the fact that you can't charge your electric vehicles that they want to force you into in just 10 years. There's a ton from... you know what? All right, here we go. We'll get into this. I was going to skip over this part, but this is actually kind of interesting regarding this green solar power electricity thing from the Wall Street Journal. Who was this writing? I'm not entirely sure. Regardless of the facts or feelings about climate, there are reasons why wind and solar power are not replacing fossil fuels. Wind and solar power are no substitute for nuclear power, are also no substitute for nuclear power. The governments of California can issue as many proclamations and prohibitions against gasoline-powered vehicles. No doubt the Biden administration will enjoy spending the ocean of tax money now earmarked for low-intensity energy sources. But reality will stubbornly remain. Citizens depend on hydrocarbons for 84% of all energy and a mere 2 percentage points lower than a decade ago. So, bottom line here is if you look at a graph that's showing the amount of increase in sustainability, it has barely moved in the last decade. I can go into more of this. I feel like this is a kind of I'm seeing a bunch of viewers drop off. And so I feel like this is not the most appealing topic of conversation. But the bottom line here is California and the rest of the country is not prepared for the entire shift to renewable energy as the libs would like to have you think. All right, I want to get to this. I don't know how much time we'll spend on this. I might just, there's a bunch of stuff continuing to come out here regarding the Trump Mar-a-Lago FBI raid. So you know, yesterday, late Tuesday, the FBI put out a bunch of more information saying, well, we knew that there were documents and they were being moved from place to place. And a bunch of your lefty liberal media is going to say, well, they were trying to hide something. That indicates the fact that documents were moved around within Mar-a-Lago indicates that they must have been trying to hide something. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. Who the heck knows? Nobody knows anything. A bunch of your lefty media outlets are jumping on this as if this is a big revelation. Oh no, we now know. In the same way that they now knew that the Russia collusion thing was actually happening, in the same way that this FBI raid is totally justified and Trump should be indicted. The bottom line here is that this didn't really prove anything, this big FBI dump yesterday, even though your MSNBCs, your CNNs, your alphabet networks of the world are saying that it did. It did not. I, like pretty much every other reasonable person, am waiting to see what happens before we rush to conclusions here. But I thought this was interesting. I don't often read MSNBC online articles on this show, but I thought this was freaking fascinating. How an author from MSNBC decided to not include a bunch of caveats that would make his entire article entirely moot. So yesterday, actually it was Monday, we talked about Alan Dershowitz saying, well, the Trump raid at this point doesn't meet the Nixon test, which had meant, okay, are both sides of the aisle on board with this particular investigation as they were with Nixon and the Watergate scandal? Didn't meet the Nixon test and also didn't meet the Hillary Clinton test, which would be that there's a clear and obvious evidence that this passes the how Hillary Clinton handled her similar investigation. This MSNBC article was outlining the fact that, no, these are not related at all. The Trump stuff is way worse than Hillary Clinton. I thought it was freaking hilarious reading this. Listen to some of this. The Clinton email probe, this again from MSNBC, the print and email protocols were, of course, the subject of a lengthy criminal probe. Federal investigators appeared eager to find evidence of wrongdoing. Then FBI Director James Comey privately remarked of his visceral hatred of some FBI officials in New York for the former Secretary of State. But federal law enforcement nevertheless didn't charge the Democrat with any crimes because they couldn't find any evidence of any criminal wrongdoing. Okay, big caveat there that we'll get to in just a second. Again, this is an article from MSNBC trying to make the case that the Trump investigation is not anything like the Clinton investigation. Comey took extraordinary steps to publicly criticizing Clinton anyway, but he begrudgingly conceded that the FBI, following the exhaustive investigation, couldn't indict her. Trump's State Department similarly conceded on a late Friday afternoon that there was no systematic or deliberate mishandling of classified information from Clinton. The Inspector General's office in Trump's Justice Department also concluded the FBI had no reason to charge Clinton. Okay, again, big caveat that we're going to get to in just a second. Trump's scandal bears little resemblance to his former rivals. Clinton didn't take physical documents. She didn't ignore pleas for cooperation. She didn't store highly secret secret information at private clubs that had the unfortunate habit of foreign spies walking around. So the big, massive caveat here is, one, all of those things did, in fact, happen with Hillary Clinton. The whole idea, they say it right here, the big difference is Clinton didn't take physical documents. Her documents were online. Oh, you mean more susceptible to hacks? That's a huge problem with your argument here, buddy, in MSNBC. And also, the big component here is what indicting a person like this, like Hillary Clinton or like Donald Trump, would do to the country. If you remember, and you probably don't, what was it, the 1960 election? The election that Nixon lost to Kennedy. Nixon, rightfully so, had a lot of evidence to prove that John F. Kennedy and his dad stole the election by way of Chicago unions. If you're not familiar with that story, we're not going to go in a ton to it. You can look it up on Wikipedia. It's a fascinating read. Bottom line here is the election was stolen literally with evidence in the 60s when Kennedy was running against Nixon. Now, Nixon decided, honorably, by the way, not necessarily an indication of how he would react to things down the road, but in this particular case, decided that he wasn't going to do anything about it, that the civility of the country wouldn't be able to handle such claims on a presidential election. So he bided his time and ended up winning the presidency later on down the road, but had so much evidence that the election was stolen. Why did he do that? Because he didn't want to tear apart the country. Could you imagine if Donald Trump had actually prosecuted Hillary Clinton? Now, I'm assuming that a lot of you in the comment section are going to be for that. A bunch of people in the comment section, I would imagine, would say we should have lock her up, Hillary Clinton for prison, all of that sort of stuff. I'm totally aware that you probably think that, and I don't necessarily disagree that she broke a ton of laws, but if you prosecute someone to the letter of the law, and I'm not saying that some people are bigger than the law and could get away with things, but you have to weigh what's happening here. If you prosecute somebody of a high power and it looks like a political stunt and it's a banana republic after that, if that's what the case is, or if that's what the outcome is, what have you done? If you lose the country in the process of following the letter of the law, is that a good thing or a bad thing? In the case of Donald Trump's DOJ not prosecuting Hillary Clinton, I would imagine that they decided that this wasn't going to be good for the country and therefore didn't do it. This MSNBC guy is trying to say, well, there's no evidence. That's why they didn't indict her. No. There's a bunch of reasons why they didn't indict her that could have had factors outside of the evidence component. In a lot of people's opinions, there's a ton of evidence. Mike Pompeo, when the FBI raid happened, said we had proof that Hillary Clinton had documents in her home that we didn't go get because we didn't want to tear the country apart. So the idea that, well, this is not anything like the Hillary Clinton investigation because she wasn't indicted, that must mean there was not enough evidence, is dumb. Part of the reason why Hillary Clinton wasn't indicted because Donald Trump and the DOJ at the time didn't want to have just the country be torn to smithereens by prosecuting political rivals. Dang, that was a long, random screed. But the bottom line here is they do have a lot of similarities, and I don't know. It remains to be seen how this is going to play out. I am of the mind that I would like for things to play out and watch them how it goes. If somehow for some reason we find out documents that Donald Trump was, I don't know, torturing, I don't know, people in a basement at the White House, and that was what was in the documents. That's fine. I prosecute him. I don't. It's a clear break. Like, you can't do that, and I think everybody would be on board. But at this point, I think we should wait and find out what's happening before we jump to conclusions of, oh, he clearly did this, clearly did that. The classified documents classified as irrelevant, all that sort of stuff. Let's hold on here. It's hotter today. I being in California, I will say it is hotter. It is hotter in the studio. Air conditioning is not the best here. But maybe that's the lackluster performance that I put on today. Maybe that's the cause of it. But that'll do it for us today. I appreciate you sticking around, tuning in. If you haven't already, give me a follow on any of your social media accounts at JOBOB, The Jobob Show. Actually, it's just The Jobob on Facebook. You can find me on any of social media platforms. Let's see. Was there anything specific that I wanted to talk about tomorrow? I'm sure we'll have more clips from Joe Biden's speech tomorrow, maybe. I'm sure if the White House press secretary does a press briefing, we'll have that also tomorrow. And maybe we can dig into more of this green energy nonsense being floated around. But that's going to do it for us today. We really appreciate you sticking around, tuning in each and every day. We'll see you same time, same place tomorrow. See you then. God bless America.